Hi there, welcome back to our Volcano City. Yes indeed, our steel platform above a magma lake where we all reside. This entire series we've been building a great big city above a volcano, as I just said, and as you can see with your own two eyes. And since we have a big city, we need a big workforce. Last episode, we actually enslaved the leader of the pigskin pirates, and maybe discuss some options for our workforce, like enslaving the entire Impid race. Well, I don't know about the entire Impid race, but maybe a village or two to work in our casino, as well as our lava snail farm, and maybe to tend to some of our guests who are renting rooms throughout our volcano city. I think that would be plenty. Of course, though, this is easier said than done. We have to go out and enslave all these Impids, but before we do that, we need a place to keep them all so that we can enslave them. Lucky for us, we still have our old mountain base, the place where it all started before we actually started building out on the lake with our platforms for the city as it is now. We were using it as something of a small prison, but we rarely get all that many prisoners. Now we are going to be transforming it into a mega prison facility. I would say on average, Impid Village probably has between about 12 to 20 people living in it at any given time, depending on the village, the size of the village, yada yada yada. So we are going to have a capacity in our prison of at least 14. Of course, we can double up on our beds if we need to in each room, though we prefer not to in case there's a massive prison break. But we could also end up expanding it out later on if we so choose. Gonna level with you though, I don't think either of those things are going to be necessary. This should be plenty, and as you can see, the prisoner that is going to be dwelling in each of these rooms is going to be mighty happy. Each room has all the modern amenities that anyone could ask for. You have a nice dresser, your own desk, some lighting so you could see, a semi-comfortable bed, a nice potted plant to go potty in. Now I know what you're thinking though, these are filthy Impids. Why would you want them to be happy? Well, the happier they are, the less likely they are to have mental breaks in here before we get them enslaved. Now then, we have our prison. It's time to go out and get our prisoners. Not to worry, as the captain is going to be leading a squad of all our able-bodied men, and also women. Now I do realize with this little amount of soldiers, there could be some security concerns. As pointed out by our friend Keela Kola Cart 9332, we do need some pretty major defensive upgrades, but even so, I think we should be able to take them, and if not, we'll just jump back in the shuttles and get the hell out of there. That is perhaps one of the biggest benefits of using our shuttle ships, as we can get there very quickly and efficiently, and we can also get the hell out of there the same way. Speaking of which, we had finally arrived. This village, from a distance, appears to not be all that heavily populated. Just enough people to fit into our prison, though I don't expect that we'll be taking all of them. Now, you might have heard me talking about a moment ago how there were some security concerns. Now, most of those are going to be avoided by the fact that we brought all sorts of drone packs with us. Hunter drones for congested alleyways like this one, as well as sentry drones to take the brunt of the damage by being much closer to the tribespeople. I always try to come prepared, and having a small little horde of sentry robots chasing down tribespeople as they flee their own village is what I call prepared. Now, normally we would attempt to chase these poor dumb fools down, but we had much more pressing concerns like trying to tend to their allies who were bleeding out in the thin layer of snow. That way we could try to take them home to enslave them. One or two did end up bleeding out before we could save them, but all in all we ended up with 5 people to take home to our prison. Here's hoping they don't get any infections on the way there. We chucked our new potential employees into our shuttle, and then we started scrounging throughout their village looking for anything and everything that we might find useful. As you could guess, there really wasn't anything. Well, actually, there was a prosthetic leg, so that's something. I normally don't mention any body parts or prosthetic limbs that we find, but this one in particular I think will be quite useful for Tail, who, ever since we've met her, has had a peg leg. This could be a pretty good replacement for that. It'll definitely make her a little bit faster. Sometime later, we eventually returned home, and we started getting all of our prisoners out of our shuttles and taking them into our new mega prison, their home sweet home. for the time being, that is. In the prison lobby, as we're attempting to break their spirits and their willpower, though, we're also going to be building some armor racks that will be stashing slave collars and slave straps on. That way, as soon as we get them enslaved, they'll have their outfits ready to go. Now, prepping their outfits before we enslave them, that's a smart move. Building their residence before we enslave them, also a smart move. But we didn't do that second one, so now we have to start working on that. These slave quarters are going to be built on the industrial side of the city, i.e. the western side. They're also going to be in close proximity to the casino as well as the snail farm, and that's because, as you guessed, this is where they're all going to be working for the most part. Even though most of them are going to be working some type of customer service position or sales position, we still need people to run our deep mining drills. Since work conditions out on the mining platforms can lead to lost limbs and also angry slaves, we are going to start working on some terror sculptures to put in their residential housing areas to keep them all terrified and under control. These sculptures, and also a few kind words from some obsidian clubs to the back of the head for our fire-breathing friends, should keep them in line for the most part. Speaking of which, 5 out of 5 of our potential employees have survived any type of wounds or infections and have now finally joined us. Now then, time to show everyone around the mining rig platforms out on the molten lake. Yes, chop, chop, we need plenty of limestone. I have some pretty big plans. Except for you, Dov, you're doing a great job. You just stand there and manage that register, and that's about it, really. This labor distribution system might be a little unfair. Oh well. However, all this conquering, this bloodshed, this murder, this me going and killing an entire village worth of people except for 5 of them and taking them and forcing them to be employed in my city is worth nothing if we don't have some proper uniforms for them. So, that's exactly what we ended up making them. And you know what? I think they look pretty good. We ended up giving them an orange prisoner jumpsuit because, well, they're prisoners still technically, even though they're enslaved, and we went ahead and dyed all their warmer winter apparel a nice orange as well. Not only this way is it going to be better looking on them, but it'll also help us tell them apart when we're in a bit of a pinch, like when we're getting raided. Look, I don't think I need to explain to you just how detrimental it would be to our society here if I accidentally had one of them equip a Hellcat rifle. Now, other than trying to avoid uprisings with our new workforce, we are also going to be performing a few medical procedures on Tail, and by a few I mean one prosthetic leg, which went down perfectly. Now with this, instead of a peg leg, she'll be moving, well, still not quite as fast as a normal leg, but a little bit faster. A little bit of time later and I realized we have a lot of lava snails that are mature and ready to be sold off to the highest bidder, which in this case is going to be our nearby Outlander allies, who we are actually going to be loading all the snails up into our shuttle and taking them to, just as a nice, gesture of goodwill, you could say, and also because I don't feel like waiting around on their lazy asses to send another caravan. We're in the business of making money and manufacturing snails for profit. We ain't got time. Val, our designated shuttle boy trader guy, is going to be doing the trading for us this time around, and it looks like while he's gone, we have a raid. Ah, the Fovhatch Clade. That's what those tribes people are called. I didn't even look into it before I attacked them and enslaved their people, and it would seem that they are here for sweet, succulent revenge. Unfortunately, my flaming friends, you will find none of that here. On the contrary, though, using our mortars, perhaps we can help you find many an unmarked grave. Our first shell was a bit of a miss, but our second ended up hitting about 3 or 4 of their soldiers. I'm afraid this was the tip of the iceberg for them, though, as they began coming towards our city, looking for some way in. They seemed shocked by the presence and the efficiency of our city's defense force, and couldn't hold a candle in comparison, resulting in the swift termination of many of their warriors before they even figured out how to get into the city. Distraught and disheveled, they limped their way towards our entranceway, where we would wait with bated breath. fingers on the triggers of our rifles. The only thing is, after literally a couple of bullets, the remaining tribespeople who were not bleeding out in the snow began to flee as our drones gave chase to them, firing their scatter guns into the back of their heads. Needless to say, I was far from impressed. However, on the contrary, we would end up taking about 5 or so more of these Impids into our prison, so we have a much larger workforce. Again, assuming nobody dies from any infections or anything like that. One fellow, this fellow here, Dan, actually had to have his leg cut off because it got pretty bad, but yeah, he's fine. Also important to mention, a lot of them, such as our friend Suv here, actually had some good skills that would make them better recruits instead of enslaved workers. So, rightfully so, we decided not to enslave Duve here, and he's going to be joining us. Yes, I know, I said I was going to enslave the Impids, but did you see the shooting skill on that fellow? My god, what a waste it would be not to put a rifle in his hands, and I can only do that if they're not chained up to a register in our casino. That's just how it works, folks. Now, while we're attempting to enslave many of these Impids and to recruit a couple of them, what do all prisons have? Prisons have guards. Some guards who actually stay at the prison at all times, that way they can keep an eye out on the prisoners. So that's exactly what we need, but if we're gonna do that, we need to make some prison guard rooms here. That way our folks who are going to be working inside our Impid mega prison don't have to go all that far to perform their duties. You know I like to talk and over-explain things, but I'll try and keep it simple here. These rooms are basically the exact same thing that everyone else has, just under the mountain here inside the little mega prison that we're building. Except in the hallway, we do have some employee lockers where they can store all their things, like, I don't know, batons to beat Impids with, and stuff like that. Oh, speaking of, by the way, 4 of the ones that we ended up capturing are now enslaved and will be doing plenty of work all over the place. As a matter of fact, you'll see them now working on a prison guard armory under the mountain here as well. Perhaps one of the best things is when they're not mining on the drilling rigs or in the casino or places like that, the Snail farm. They're actually helping out with a lot of construction, which is so crucial. Now that we've got a makeshift armory thrown together for our guards, I think it's time that I introduce you to them. We have Suv and Hirak. Look no further. Who better to discipline and to take care of Impid prisoners than 2 Impids themselves? Now, some people will tell you that this poetic hypocrisy of having these 2 Impids become the first 2 guards to guard the other Impids is just because Mayor Elijah hates any dirty, filthy Impids in the city, and he doesn't want any like this who have joined us working there. And while yes, that is true, I kind of forgot what I was saying. Moving on. Now, it must be said, credit where credit is due. Thanks to our new Impid forced workforce, I should say, our manpower and our mining operations are off the charts, quite literally. Now, with our mining being as efficient as it is nowadays, we can also mass produce stone blocks, which can also be used for construction, which is a pretty big thing for an expanding city. And also, not only do we use them for construction now, but we'll be using them for some sculptures. Once we run out of wood, that is. See, the best thing about all this manufacturing and production is that we can make a lot of money for the city off of it, like when we sell off all these sculptures that we've been creating for, well, it wasn't all that much, but it was something. Speaking on our manufacturing, though, one of our shuttles last episode that we created, I asked you fine folks for a fine name for it, and so we have one. It will now be known as the Escargot Runner, and this splendid name is provided to us by our good friend Wakakuli12. A very fitting name given its proximity to the snail farm and also the fact that we've been stuffing it full of snails for trade recently. Moving on though, I think it's time for a little bit of construction. You remember our old recreation building? Yeah, me either really. Who remembers that ever since we built the casino where everyone can enjoy themselves and spend a little bit of their salaries back into the city? So, what we need to do is get rid of this old recreation area and use it for something more functional, something more useful, something more profitable. We're actually going to be building our very first restaurant in the city. Not only a restaurant, but this is going to be a luxury carnivore restaurant as well. More on that odd phrasing in just a moment. Let's take a look at the restaurant, all finished now. Not only do we have some eloquent dining facilities, as well as some television for entertainment as everyone's enjoying their meals, but we also have some foliage and vegetation to really beautify the place and to really set in that luxurious feeling. With ample seating for any and all guests, some flowers right next to you so you can genuinely smell the roses, giving off a volcanic ash scent, I feel. Oh wait, that might be the rest of the city. Anyways though, pretty nice. We also have one of the finest standard industrial kitchens this side of the volcanic isles. This is going to give us ample enough equipment to prepare some of the finest carnivore meals, and the type of meals that give you a mood buff from eating them, but also that we can charge just a lot more for to our guests. The type of carnivore meals that will only be made from the finest lava snail specimen, tend to rise to perfection. It only makes sense. Honestly, I was not expecting the snails to have babies this fast, but my god, do they ever. So instead of just selling them all to make profit on bulk of snails like that, we could just turn them into some meals. Not only will our people really enjoy this, but of course, so will our guests, most importantly. It really helps that we have a bit of a secret sauce. It's not all that much of a secret. Remember those peppers I said we're gonna start feeding them last episode? Yeah. Now to ensure that these meals are always ready at a moment's notice for any of our guests, we do have some state-of-the-art vending machines in the restaurant as well. That way we don't always have to have an attendant in here. Our Impid workforce's time is better spent on the mining platforms right now anyhow. Now I think this great food though and this wonderful dining experience is going to have many people coming back very often to continue buying things and to continue staying here in the city. Not only can they eat here in the restaurant though, but they can also take it on the go to the casino where they can gamble away their life savings or maybe their child's college fund or whatever. Of course though, credit where credit is due. The idea for this luxury restaurant is actually from our good friend Benatar358. I think it really fits the city well, especially now that we've moved away from industrial things in this side of the city and more towards tourism. So thank you again, and thank you to everyone who's been suggesting additions to the city. It really helps me out, and I love your ideas and feedback as always. Now, sticking with the theme of taking your great suggestions and adding them as additions to the city, we have yet another addition that we're going to be adding just under our hospital. This is a place that I think many of our guests and also our injured folks, or just anyone who wants to visit, of course, even the Impids for God's sake, completely free of charge, will love. This is going to be a botanical garden. A place that will stand out as a statement and a testament of beauty and growth and life and just the will to survive. In the most hostile of environments, we have thriving gardens and basically little miniature parks. Obviously, we have a lot of vegetation here, mostly flowers and trees and some bushes. You will notice that we have some overhead trestles here as you're seeing, so there are flowers on the ceiling as well. And you'll also notice we have a large fountain, some seating, and a diagram of the planet where people can kind of learn more about volcanic activity and the different biomes and more educational stuff. We also have some modules here from the space-based furniture, which we're going to be using as terrariums for different environments too. I like this first garden so much I decided to build a second one right next to some of the places that we're renting out for a night to guests, as well as our brand new restaurant. Perhaps after they fill their bellies, they can take a little stroll through the indoor garden. A great suggestion from our friend Dag Nebbert. Yet another amazing suggestion. I think that these gardens not only would be very crucial for people's just mental states being able to get out of the volcanic ash for a bit, but perhaps they would help us in some way with filtering out the ashy air as well, the CO2. I'm not exactly sure, I'm not a scientist, but I like to think there's a little something there. It would seem that some of our wealthy, humanoid-looking guests also think that there's a little something here, as we have a huge group of them, almost a whole village on vacation here in the city at this point, spending a lot of their hard-earned silver, I might add, meaning that we are really collecting large chunks of change at this point. Finally, we get to witness our industrial and power-producing powerhouse of a home become a powerhouse tourist destination of well-renown. It would seem the tourists aren't the only ones stopping in. We also have a slaver caravan. I'm not interested in selling off any of my Impids, of course, as we desperately need them, but we could purchase ourselves quite a few soldiers. I introduce to you Nikki, Pyra, Banson, and Dominguez. We're actually going to be evenly splitting them. 2 of them will work in the prison alongside our other 2 Impids who have recently become guards, and 2 others will help patrol throughout the city and just kind of go about their day-to-day lives as everyone else does. I also realize it's a little hard to tell their uniforms apart right now, so we're going to be working on that too. We're actually going to start researching fabrication, as it is a prerequisite, the prerequisite, into recon and marine armors, which is going to be our next project. Now, because we know fabrication can be an absolute bitch, we are going to be building yet another high-tech research table, doubling up our research speed, and meaning we'll be able to complete it in half the time. Which also means the research should be completed by the time that we finish a little hotel just on the outside, or as I like to put it, on the beach of the lava lake. For some of our more skittish guests who might not want to actually sleep on the lake itself, we are going to be charging 60 silver because even though it's not quite as nice being on the lake and getting the same scenic views, the rooms are quite a bit bigger than usual, so I think it's fair. And would you look at that? We did indeed finish fabrication a little bit after this was completed. Now we can jump right into recon armor. But as we're doing that, it looks like we have a lava emergence. We were none too tickled about this, as it was actually emerging onto the platform, so we immediately moved the sticky willy, but after a day or two, I'd noticed that the lava wasn't exactly overflowing enough to overtake any more parts of the platform. It would seem that we've built our city just high enough this time. And then a few days later, something incredible happened. Young Vulcan here is finally 13 years of age. He's basically a man, at least in RimWorld standards, and as such, he can finally put on his papa's armor, filling his father's shoes. Or, in this case, his father's adventurous vac suit. We even let him put his own spin on it. Sun, black, and red. You get your eye for colors from your papa, I must tell you. He is also going to be wielding a Hellcat rifle. That way, no matter what adventure he goes on where life takes him, he'll be able to spread the flame of his home, always. As we're doing some boring expansion here on the Lava Lakes beach, I do want to say that I think I'd like to take Vulcan out for his own series and through his own adventures, although I don't know exactly where to go with that, or when to start that, or what exactly to do in general. I'm sure I'll come up with something, but if you guys have any feedback, it's always welcome, or suggestions, of course. As you know, I love when I get suggestions and feedback from you guys, so be sure to let me know if you have any suggestions and ideas as to where you'd like to see Vulcan go once he's an adult. But with that, my friends, we have finally finished up the research into recon armor, and BW would waste absolutely no time throwing together about 3 of these new inventions, as unfortunately that's all we had the resources to make. Looks like we're gonna need to sell plenty more lava snails for some advanced components. Either way though, that's 3 more of our lava daddies and the big old totem guns, who are now much more well protected and have a pretty serious upgrade in their equipment and armor. Truly though, I think we should put this new recon armor to the test, and who better to lead the squad on an adventure than our very own Vulcan. With his father's blessing, of course. But that'll be next time. See you later. Thank you very much for watching today's episode, as always, my friends, and thank you for always supporting me and these series and the channel and these episodes and just everything, and a special thanks to our patrons, as none of this would be possible without you guys as well. I love every single one of you, patron or non-patron, of course, and I hope you guys have enjoyed. Once again, I love you, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.